Good afternoon. I call to order the Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 School Board Agenda Workshop. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Okay, roll call.
Colin Conklin, present.
Cheryl Massero.
Sally Hunt.
Christy Chong.
Will Furry, present.
Lashaka Mora.
Okay, we're going to move down to number 5, changes to the agenda.
Yes, I do have 2 requests. If we could move 10.02 after public comment. If we could also move 14.01 to after 7.08, please.
Very good. We'll make those changes. And if there are no others, then we will move on to 6, public comment. Do we have anybody registered for public comment?
No one registered for public comment.
Okay. If anybody from the public would like to come forward, seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to 10.02 ILA site subagreement, Mr. Freeman and Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon, School Board, Superintendent Moore, Chairman Furry. I am joined this afternoon with Mr. James Hurst, Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Palm Coast. And today before you, we have a site sub-agreement between the City of Palm Coast and Flagler County School District for joint maintenance of certain Indian Trails Middle School / Indian Trail Sports Complex facilities. As you may recall, back in July of last year, I came before you with a master agreement that went over various facilities that the district owns as well as the City of Palm Coast owns that we are collaboratively using. And a part of that outline was that there may be certain facilities that require a site sub-agreement that goes into more detail. This agreement before you is the sub-agreement for the Indian Trails Middle School / Indian Trail Sports Complex facilities. So this agreement goes into more depth as it relates to those facilities at the campus of Indian Trails Middle School. Over the years, there have been other agreements such as the lighting of the fields, utilizing both fields. So this puts it all into one document for your review. I have Mr. Hurst here with me to answer any questions you all may have as it pertains to this agreement.
Does the board have any questions?
Are there any questions I should have?
No, essentially what this agreement allows us is to be collaborative with our partners at the city so that we may utilize facilities that they help maintain. For instance, our fields The city maintains the fields to a certain level for them to use for competitions, and our students have the ability to use those fields during the school day. So it is a great relationship that we have with the city so that not only do our students have the ability to use these fields and facilities, but also the community.
Can I understand that the City of Palm Coast is voting on this evening, too?
That is correct. At their 6 p.m. meeting, the city council will be hearing this as well.
Go ahead, Dr. Cook.
Is the 20, and forgive me for not knowing this, but is the $25,000 fee new?
No, we receive an invoice every year from the city of Palm Coast for the maintenance of those fields, and I believe last year it was around the same amount, about 20. It was 27 last year.
So these are for the fields where primarily soccer is played. It's not necessarily the fields right behind Indian Trails Middle School. Is that correct?
So it includes fields 3 through 8. So when we look at the end of this agreement, we have in Exhibit A those various fields. So it's the ones maintained by the track as well as the ones that are right next to the Indian Trail Sports Complex.
And though that's the sports complex where you do have a series of competition events, championships and whatnot.
Correct.
Do those teams pay the city a fee to use those fields? They do. But we're paying $25,000.
Correct. So
Who's receiving the fees from the sports?
Some of our fees, they do come to the City of Palm Coast, yes.
Okay, so do any of the athletic events that are being charged and they're paying for the use of the fields, is there a percentage? Do all the funds from those competitions go to the city? Do a portion of them come to us? How does that work?
We go through a permit process and then they pay the permit and that comes to the city.
Okay.
There's no portion going to the school district.
I have lots more questions, but I'll ask them after.
There is an agreement, or there is a statement in the agreement about if the parking lot is charged for, then we would get a portion of that. But we're paying because we have the ability to use those fields at that service level that the fields are maintained at. And that's the fields 3 through 8 that, Indian Trails uses daily.
So are the fields, so maybe I'm not thinking of the right fields. I'm talking about not the fields behind the school or near the track. I'm talking about the fields on the other side of that bluff.
Right, there are 8
that are
fields.
all the competition fields. Are those fields are what is part of this agreement, correct?
So only the fields that are a part of this agreement are the ones that are located on school board property.
Okay, same question.
Right, there are 8 fields out at Indian Trails, and there are the 3 fields that are not used by the school, and that's where we did an adjustment to what we have paid in the past. We reduced it so that we're not paying for those fields because we're not using them. The city is basically paying for them. The city is, and we are also paying for the upkeep of the fields that are maintained at that service level that is a service A or B level.
So they're our property,
Yep.
but we're paying the city for them. Any revenue being generated by those fields is going to the city and not the school district. And we're responsible for the maintenance of the bathroom facilities as well?
We're responsible for the maintenance of the bathroom facility if we use it. If the city is using it for tournaments, they're maintaining and resupplying and restocking. This agreement, we've had this agreement for several years.
I know, but it's a sub-agreement now and it's being pulled out separately.
It's always been a sub-agreement. We're just updating.
Right, but it's being renewed.
It is.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So now would be the time to ask questions about those kinds of things, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So those are kind of the concerns that I have. One, that it's school board property. Two, that there is tremendous revenue, and I'd be curious to know what is the revenue that's generated from these fields. We're not getting any of that revenue, and we're paying the city for them. So I'm struggling with all of that. And in addition to that, it looks like we're responsible for the bathroom facility. So if the bathroom facility, I understand what you're saying, Dave, if there's a tournament going on that weekend, the city's responsible for making sure there's toilet paper, right? What if there's a leak? What if something breaks?
Right.
Who's responsible for fixing that?
We're responsible for it. The city built that bathroom facility and donated it to the school board. So
But we're responsible, so we're paying $25,000. We're not getting any of the revenue generated from any of the athletics. And we are maintaining and keeping the maintenance of the bathroom facility. Is that right?
that is correct, yeah.
Because I don't think that sounds like a fair deal. Just saying. So, but those are my questions for now. But I would like to know if somebody could find out for me what is the annual revenue generated from the athletics or from the use of the fields. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
So can I ask a follow-up question, Dr. Conklin, to kind of your line of questioning? Superintendent Moore, who in the district for this particular situation is that point? Is it our attorney? Is it our CFO? Is it our COO? Who is that person in the district who all of those questions Dr. Conklin is asking and really making sure things are fair? And who is that person who's kind of looking over contracts like this and looking at it at that level of detail?
So this has been a collaborative conversation and project that they've been working on now for months around this agreement. And the items that Dr. Conklin is questioning are items that have been they are not a part of the changes that have been made. And so those were not changes that we as a school board brought forward in the discussion to make changes to. Those were standing pieces. Other portions of the agreement is what the team has worked to update. But all of our contracts, they go through new contracts. They go first through our school board, our school district, through Sniffen and Spellman for review to make sure that they are lawful, don't really compromise anything, and then they go to the board, and Mr. Delaney does review those items.
I obviously I have a concern of, like, we shouldn't have to have an elected board member asking these questions. Like, I kind of make the assumption that the genius people running the district are, really making sure.
So no disrespect, but I think that is our job.
I think it's our job. I kind of see our role as oversight, like just to make sure, but I would expect that scrutiny is being done at the operations level. So, by no means, Dr. Conklin, am I saying, I think your questions are fantastic.
No.
I think that the district team, they've worked to bring forward to you a contract or an agreement that meets the needs of the school district as well as the city. And then as you are right now, anything that is of question or concern to you, like, this is the opportunity for you to bring forth that. When we think about it, we look at it as, it's the maintenance portion of it that we're paying for those fields. But I agree, Dr. Conklin, whatever questions you as a board have, we'll definitely go back and get those questions answered.
So, so we own the property and the $25,000 is for maintenance, is my understanding. Okay,
Yes,
which is actually cheap, I would think. But I am curious about any revenue for sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if it's fair. Like, what is the revenue compared to what we're paying? And then we're maintaining the bathroom facility. And am I understanding that we own the lights?
I believe that the city owns the lights, and they put the lights in.
In the agreement, it says the school board owns the field lights, but I'm sorry for the question. It's not so much do we own the field lights, but who repairs the field lights? That would be, okay, so
The electric bill, they pay the electric bill on the.
I see where they pay the electric bill. Do they fix them or repair them or replace them? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just, this is the time to ask those kind of questions, and we haven't had that opportunity. It's a renewal, and we're updating it, and we're looking, now would be the time to have that discussion.
I totally understand, but I know the city's point of view is that and we did this agreement when we built that in 2016. I think they built the bathroom facility, and then they donated that building to the school board. And we've had an agreement since that time, so.
Right, I'm just saying, the agreement's up, we're looking at it, we're updating it. If you take the 25,000 and you multiply it by the number of years since 2016, we've more than paid for a very luxurious bathroom. Right, so I think it makes sense, like what Christy is saying, if the 25,000 is going for the maintenance and the upkeep of the fields and whatnot, that makes sense. But the big question for me becomes then, well, what is the revenue that's being generated in the use of those fields? If we own them, then what is the offset? Is this a win-win, right? Because if we're looking at creating a win-win, it should benefit both entities. That's all I'm saying. Now would be the time for us to ask those kinds of questions.
And we will definitely go forward and make sure we get that information for the board.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just like to, all these questions are great, and they're definitely getting the wheels turning here. But what I'm understanding is that the 25,000 is basically, these are our fields. If we weren't paying this 25,000 to the city, then we would be responsible for maintaining those fields. So it's almost like we're contracting them to take over the maintenance portion of these fields. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, the question, we're to expand on that. So if these fields are being rented out, like we would look at as a facility use. Correct. Right? I believe the city was looking at, they said you pull a permit to use it. Is that how it works in the city? Okay. So, when this was originally drafted, with the $25,000, the revenue might have looked different way back then than now, right? So are we, again, it's a good point to say, are we at a fair and balanced number? Because the reality is that the reason why there is wear is because the programs are happening there. So if they weren't happening there, we wouldn't have the wear and maybe wouldn't need the level of maintenance on the field because of the wear and tear would be less, right? So so that's where I think we should be exploring, is to make sure that we're in a good balance. Because if the city's generating more than enough money to repair the fields, then maybe some of that should be offsetting this 25,000.
The concern that I have is it's multi-layered, right? So if they're, and it may be that they're only generating $25,000 in revenue, I don't know. But if they're generating $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, well, do you have a ballpark?
Yeah, sorry, I was just about to kind of come up and talk. Our revenue is very minimal. I mean, we're talking $3,000, $4,000. It's really not much.
So all those huge soccer tournaments, you're only generating $3,000?
Through our tournaments, yes. A lot of our fields that do get used for games on Saturdays, they're part of our Sport Alliance, which they do get the fields for free. That's just the agreement we've had in place since 2012.
Okay.
But when we do have some of our big tournaments come in, they do pay a fee, but it's, I mean, off the top of my head, we're looking at $100 a day for a field.
Okay.
I can get more exact info for you, but we're not looking at 25 at all for revenue. Yeah.
That would be, I think that would be helpful. I don't know if the rest of the board wants to see that, but I'd be curious to see what the revenue is generated, on an annual basis from all the tournaments, whatever the use is, however that works.
We can get that.
Okay.
So, like flag football that gets played there, would that be $100 charge for that?
If it's the Mad Dogs Sport Group, they would be free. They are part of our sport alliance.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, for their games. But if they do a tournament,
Like lacrosse and.
yeah, lacrosse, they pay. They definitely pay. The only thing that maybe the Mad Dogs would pay if they had a big tournament would be staffing for parking, and that's it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, yeah, staff, if you could just kind of consolidate these comments here and bring back some information to address these questions. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now going to move on to 7, finance consent, 7.01. Ms. Warmick?
Good afternoon, Chairman Furry, board members, and Superintendent Moore. I am here to answer any questions you have on finance consent 7.01 to 7.08.
Okay. Well, 7.01 is Imagine Charter School financials. Does anybody have any questions in regard to those financials?
Patty, how are they ending the year?
It's hard to say right now. I would say historically, they ended with a $1 fund balance for the past several years. I would expect the same, that their parent company would bail them out of any shortfall. Any additional capital that they have received is through capital funds, not general fund. So that does not impact their general fund balance. So I would expect the same $1 fund balance.
Okay.
All right. If there are no more questions on that agenda item, we'll move to 7.02, purchase orders over 10,000.
I've got two. On the purchase of the Apple iPads, what's the, there's like 3,000.
Could you tell me what page, please?
Page 3.
Sure, I'm going to have Mr. Deasing come up on this one.
Okay, go through that. I know it's coming from Halfpenny. I just want to see what we're getting, because we've been working with Apple for a very, very, very long time.
Absolutely. So this actually is the refresh for our primary grades, our K-3. There's 3,300 total devices.
Okay.
That also includes Apple Care for 3 years, as well as cases for them.
Okay. All right. And that's Halfpenny, so.
Correct.
We're good.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. The others on page 8. We're paying $87,600 to the county for the Public Safety Commission's network license. What's that?
That is the annual licensing fee that is from Flagler, from the county for the 800 megahertz emergency operations.
Oh, for the entire,
Correct. That's
just us, the school district?
Correct. That's
Okay.
our portion.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out.
It has increased significantly over
Yeah.
the three years. Yeah.
Okay. That's all that I had.
Anyone else? I do have a question on a couple of them. For Flagler Power Equipment, $22,000 for Sunray Solar Light Tower.
Can you tell me what page, please?
That's on page 1. I think it's the 4th one down. Mr. Brush is coming up. Welcome.
Good afternoon. That's for a new LED light tower. We currently have 2 light towers that are older diesel. Unfortunately, one of them is no longer able to be fixed. So we purchased one light tower to replace that, and we plan to purchase another one this next fiscal year.
Where are these towers used?
Currently, we're using them at FPC for the construction, because with the lights being out to light that up. But we use them at for the events like in October when they do the Halloween bash stuff at multiple, whether it's Wadsworth, Matanzas, we'll use them for their football games. FPC will use them for their football games and different events just for extra lighting.
So they're portable. They're just.
Yes,
They're
they are
portable
portable.
lights. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now I
And they're
understand.
they're complete. Are these ones are completely solar? Is
The new one that we just purchased, yes, sir, it's solar batteries. The batteries last somewhere between 4 to 5 years, and they're about $5,000 to replace those So there's no engine, they're a lot quieter, so when you're in an event, you don't have that noise. We did some extensive looking into the solar over diesel or gas power, so the maintenance on them, the cost of that's a lot less as well.
Okay, great. And I have one other that may be for you as well. It was for $60,000 for the wireless battery-powered mobile lifts. On page 2, I think it's like the third one down. Steritil Connie.
That's,
What page you say?
On page 2.
yeah,
It's-
we're going to have
it's the-
Mr. Freeman come and
okay.
talk about that one.
Afternoon, Board. I can address that one. That was for fleet services. Those are lifts for our buses. There are 5 of these lifts that over time, they have reached the end of their lifespan, and we are slowly replacing, over the next 3 years, we're replacing those. This is our first set of 2, I believe. Right.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you for that clarification.
And that comes out of the 1.5 mil capital funds for equipment.
All right, so that's all my questions for that agenda item. If there are no others, we will move on to 7.03, vendor payments. Okay, if there are no questions under vendor payments, we will move on to 7.04, deletion of inventory. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to 7.05, approval of finance budget amendments.
I have just a couple of quick questions.
Yes.
Could, on page, I think it's the very first page.
Are you
budget
on the revisions or the transfers?
For the A+ distribution, can you give us a little background on that? Let me see what page it's on.
Is that revisions?
Is it? Yeah, I think it's revisions. Okay.
What happened with this, because you're going to see an in and out here, the revenue and expense. The A+ funds were not distributed with the regular FEFP run in the first calc because it's not known at that time, last May, as to who,
Gets
the grades. So when that was distributed, we added the revenue to offset the expense, but then it came in an FEFP run the following month, so we backed it back out.
So is that kind of reimbursing?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't sure which way
No,
it
it
was
is
going.
definitely reimbursing. We are kept whole on that whole piece,
Okay,
and we have not overspent those funds.
great. And then I think it is on budget transfers. Page 4. It's more curiosity, and I'm
Sure.
sorry, Patty, I should have called
No,
you
you're
for
good.
this.
You're good.
It says transfers for best book lists. It's about $70,000. What is that? And if you don't know right now,
I will
you
have
can
to get back with you on
me.
that. I'll get with teaching and learning.
Okay.
On that, that is definitely in curriculum, but I will definitely get back with you. That is through one of our federal grants, probably Title I.
Yeah,
But I will get back with you on that.
okay. I was just curious about what best books are. That was,
And we do have Ms. Frank here. If it's okay with the board, we can bring her up to answer the question now.
great.
Thank you, Superintendent.
And I apologize, Patty, I should have asked you the question before.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Part of our new standards and benchmarks, the Department of Education gave us a book list of trade books that they deem appropriate and complex text for us to use as instruction. So through this grant fund, we're able to provide one complete set to every classroom teacher for these books to be used for read-alouds, for comprehension strategies, and vocabulary instruction. So all teachers, grade K to 5 in all of our schools, will get a set of these trade books to use for instruction.
Could you send me a list of what those are?
I would love to, and it is through the Science of Reading grant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to 7.0.
Can I get one more
Oh,
question in there? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Absolutely, go right
Sorry
ahead.
about that. I'm just looking at this. What's the transfer to cover coaching salaries at Imagine Schools? We pay.
Curious about that too.
Yeah, what is that?
What page are you on?
It's the same page we were just on. It's the next to last, almost.
I think it was 4.
4. It is 4. It's near the bottom.
Yes, I will,
8,000.
that is a grant fund. I will need to look into that. I will get back with you all this week on that.
There's Jeff
Is
has.
someone coming up?
There's someone coming.
Great.
Get it, take it, just explain.
Hang it out.
Good afternoon, Board. That is part of our Title II grant that they're allowed access to those funds for federal programs. That pays 0.5% of FTE for one of their academic coaches.
Okay, academic coaching. That's why I caught my,
Yes.
thank you.
Oh, it's an academic coach.
Yes, not athletic coach.
thought it was
I thought,
athletic.
yeah,
Academic.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And just for clarification, there's only so many words you can type into.
I know. We can get it, so that's why we ask. We don't understand. Okay.
Okay, so we will move on to 7.06, approval of professional development travel. Any questions there? Seeing none, we'll move on to 7.07, approval of district financial statements. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to 7.08, tentative trim calendar.
This is the tentative calendar. We are still working with Department of Revenue to ensure that these dates are spot on. It is a very lengthy, detailed process to make sure these dates are in line with their trim manual. Any changes will be done within the next few days for approval in 2 weeks.
I would like to add that, Board Chair, if at the end of the meeting at closing comments, we can just take a moment to highlight some very important dates that we have coming up at the end of the year to ensure that we do have a quorum so that we can do all end of year final business, please. Thank you.
So
And one of
you'll do
those-
that at the end of the meeting.
One of those dates you'll address is the 8 o'clock on the 28th.
6/28 date,
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'll just make a comment and just information for the board. I spoke with Patty about that date, 6/28. I am not going to be here that date, and it can't be changed. So we just need to have.
Cheryl's not here.
I'm not going to be here either.
Okay.
Same reason.
Well, we need 3.
I work, but I could probably go to work later because it's at 8 o'clock, right?
Okay.
I'm here.
You're here. So as long as we have 3, this is a very short meeting.
Yes.
It will last less than 15 minutes.
Yeah,
It's
and-
the only thing on the agenda is just some check numbers that's required by our Auditor General's office.
Yes, and Vice Chair, you'll have to chair that meeting. Okay? Any other questions in regards to the trim? Seeing none, we'll move on to 14.01, COPS debt refunding.
At this point, I'm going to have Ms. Laura Howe, she is from PFM, our financial advisor, to talk about a potential refunding. She will discuss where the market is currently versus where we were previously and where we look to go to in the future as far as getting this debt refunded, which is the same as refinancing a debt. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I think there'll be a presentation if y'all might make it easier to follow along on some of this. So we are going to be talking about a potential refunding opportunity, but before we get into that first, just because it's been a minute since we've actually gone through what a certificate of participation is. So if we want to go to slide 3, this just sort of gives an overview, if we can shrink that so it's all kind of on the same page. an overview of how the certificate of participation actually works. So we will be coming back to the board at the next board meeting to present this financing with all of the financing documents for the board's consideration. And so there's a very lengthy detail of documents on the next slide that we won't need to go through slide by slide. But when a certificate of participation is issued, which is the main vehicle that Florida school districts utilize to issue their 1.5 mils, the school board approves the financing documents, recesses, convenes as the leasing corporation, which is the same body, and then approves those documents as well. And so it's that the leasing corporation is leasing those facilities to the school board, and that at the end of the lease, the school board owns it. So this was all set up many years ago. It was validated by the Supreme Court. Since those 1.5 mils dollars come in on an annual basis, it wouldn't technically allow you to issue past 12 months. And this structure, which again has been validated by the Supreme Court, allows you to issue past. This is not new money, but I just wanted you to know, since it's been a little bit since we've come to you with this type of structure, sort of what to expect at the next board meeting, if there's any sort of questions about that now to address on that piece. Okay, so we'll skip down to slide 6. And so we wanted to talk to you about the Certificates of Participation Series 2014A. They were originally issued in a par amount of $43,870,000. Currently outstanding is $24,200,000 with a final maturity of August 1st, 2030. They advanced refunded the Series 2005A certificates. Advanced refunding is no longer an option, so when this became close to the current call date, which is August 1, 2024, you are eligible for current refunding within 90 days of that call date. And so when we started kicking off this transaction, savings looked very favorable. So we've been going through getting the financing documents ready, talking to the rating agencies in preparation of bringing this to you to potentially price. It's for the maturities maturing on or after August 1st, 2025 are subject to prepayment this coming August 1st. We're looking at calling about $14.535 million of the outstanding $24 million to potentially refund for savings on this. And we do have Tom Kai and Olivia here from Bank of America, and they are the sole underwriter on this transaction and can kind of give you additional market color if you want. But I just wanted to give a breakdown of this. Normally I would kind of tell you where the savings are today. What I'm going to walk through is what the minimum parameters are that are in the resolution that are coming to you. So the final maturity won't be past the current call date or the current final maturity of August 1st, 2030. So the final maturity remains the same. We would have to have a minimum of 3% net present value savings in order to proceed forward with this, which produces over $440,000 of net present value savings for the district. They wouldn't be callable going forward since the final maturity is in 2030, and typically in the public market, a call date is a 10-year standard, so we're within that window. The market has moved away significantly from the time that we started this process, between 35 and 60 basis points from March to now, and so that's 0.43 or 0.65%. It's increased in the yield curve that we use to price off of. Additionally, investor spreads have increased. And so currently the savings have slipped down to, we're looking at, as of today's rates with today's spreads, 1.71%. So we're under this 3%. But we didn't want to wait. We wanted to proceed forward to bring this to the board for you to consider at the next board meeting to approve, so that if we're in a position and the market moves back in our favor, we can execute and capture these savings for the district. Just drew a blank on what I was saying, but if we're not at that 3%, we don't do anything. So at a minimum, we would not proceed forward unless we're at that 3% savings. We would hope to get more than that, but that's our bottom line, that it has to have that happen in order for us to enter into the market and price these bonds for the district. And that is standard 3% for current refunding. Back when advanced refundings were allowable, typically you could see, we would put a parameter at 5%, but a current, because this is the call date that's coming up, we set it down to 3%. And the next steps on slide 7, just so that you're aware. So we have pushed off receiving ratings just to kind of get the tone on the market, because those do expire after 60 days. So we want to make sure that they're fresh, but we've already had the calls with the rating agencies. It will be coming back to you all on June 18th for consideration. Originally, we were planning to have a sale in late June and close in mid-July, but that's going to be day-to-day now to see how the market moves. In the past month, the market's moved between 13 and 40 basis points in the maturities that we're pricing. So in a month, it could swing back in our favor as well. So we just want to be prepared to take advantage of that opportunity. So any questions that you all have, or if you wanted any more colors from Bank of America on what's going on, happy to answer.
And just for further clarification, I know I mentioned this at a previous board workshop. The reason we are looking at this, our financial advisors look at this on a continuing basis for us, but several years of this bond or of this COPS, they're at a 5%, I believe, interest rate. So it's in our best interest to take advantage of the current market rate for several of those ending years. The maturity date, as Ms. Howe has stated, will not change. It's just a matter of getting the higher interest rate years down to current market rate.
So it'd be like refinancing your mortgage. Essentially, that's what this is.
Okay. So just a couple of questions to clarify. So what we're saying is basically the market is swinging about 30 points back and forth. The hope is that it will swing back in the other direction. So right now it's at 1.7. We're not taking action on any of this. This is for information purposes. We're not taking action unless it's at 5%. I'm sorry, 3%.
So today's informational coming to you on June 18th. We do have to have board approval to proceed forward with the actual financing in the market. So we need the board to approve it. But in those documents, it has said that we have to have a minimum of 3%. So once you approve, then we would work with the district and Bank of America to figure out the best day to enter the market to get investors to buy the bonds.
Okay, so we would approve something like that would have a caveat that there would be no action taken unless there was the 3%.
Correct. So that is written in the resolution. And so once you give that approval, we make sure that we're meeting those parameters. But we can't enter into the market without board approval first. And so if it stays at this 1.7%, the deal will not get done.
Understood.
But we'll monitor it to see where the market's moving. And hopefully when we started this, it was better than 3%. Right. So hopefully we'll see that back.
Okay. And it doesn't change the maturity date. Correct. So that's good. And the savings would be, if we get the 3%, would be 440,000 plus change.
Correct.
So you said it's similar to like a mortgage, right? Refinancing a mortgage. So are there closing costs?
Yes.
So what are the fees for the closing? What would the fees be if we were to do this?
Are you asking for the dollar amount or the?
If we go with the 3%, right?
Yep.
And the savings of 440, what are the fees associated with the transaction, basically?
So 3% would be inclusive.
Or will we see that on June 18th or whatever it is?
3% will be inclusive of the fees. So this amount would include the fees. And so we call what there's cost of issuance. So it'd be your financial advisor, bond counsel, disclosure counsel, your trustee, the verification agent, the subscription of slugs, which is what you would invest the escrow into little. That's the cost of issuance, which we estimate being no more than $150,000. I'm getting those final numbers right now from the whole working group. But again, that's already incorporated into this. So it's not on, like, you're not going to take 150 off. And for the underwriter side of thing and the underwriters council, I think we're looking at 90,000 maybe for them. But again, that 3%, it's inclusive of that. Yes.
So I'm just curious, and I don't mean this to be fresh. I'm just curious about it. Because if you were refinancing a home, right, you would shop out to see who's giving you the best rates, who's giving you the best closing fees, and all the rest of that. Is it the same? Do we do the same kind of thing?
So we're under contract as your financial advisor. So and same thing with bond counsel and disclosure counsel, you have ongoing contracts with us that we're constantly, working with the district. Your trustee is written into the master lease agreement, so that's not something, but we shop out the verification agent, the slugs. I think those are really kind of the only, and then the bank, obviously, we had looked at as well.
So we do shop out the
Some,
bank, the
yes.
best rates for the bank.
For the underwriter, it's not just the rates that you're looking at, but you want to make sure that they have a strong underwriting desk to bring in investors, because all of that ties into your overall yield you'll be ultimately paying at the end.
And so as the agent working on behalf of the board, if I'm understanding correctly, then would you do look at who's giving us the best deal with closing costs, let's say?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there like a marketplace? Is it where investors come in and bid on these?
So
Or is
I'm
it,
sure
because,
that-
it's like, you say it's like a loan, like a refinance your house, right? So that's, basically there's like using Dr. Conklin's comparison, you go to one bank, you go to another bank, and they have different fees, different rates, right? How does one shop this type of transaction?
It's kind of that. You have your basic yield curve that you start off of, and we use B-Valve. And so unlike a mortgage where it's a 10-year, 15, 30-year, just one rate, this is by maturity. So each maturity is its own loan. And so that yield curve prices off of that. And then on top of that, you have a spread based on your credit ratings, which would sort of be like what your credit score impacts in your ultimate mortgage rate off of what you would see a baseline for a mortgage rate being with excellent credit. And so there's looking at that. So those are two things. The yield curve we have no control over, which is why we're at the 1.7% right now. And the spreads are part where we saw them tighten significantly at the beginning of the year. So some of that comes into investor demand. But ultimately what happens is Bank of America's desk on the day of pricing is reaching out to investors. So they look at the current people who hold the district's bonds, people who have been trading the paper in the secondary market, to see if they're interested. So they reach out to those. Their sales force calls those people and say, are you interested in buying these bonds now that Flagler School District has out in the market? And they're looking for new investors that are out there. And so the spreads that we talk about that are based on the credit rating, and we are getting insurance bids to see if there's potential for that to be a benefit, which that is being bid out as well. So with those components that come into it, what we ultimately like to see is what they call the build the book. So by each maturity, you want at least one-time subscription. So if you have $3 million in that maturity, you want at least $3 million of order from investors. And then when you see on top of that what we say build the book, we want to see them get more and more orders in for that maturity, so that we're a couple times oversubscribed, which then can reduce your yields, which is a good thing. And PFM does have a pricing group as well, and so we are not out in the market talking to investors, but they work on every single transaction that we do price. So they're seeing what the investors are doing, what the demand is, and work very closely with the underwriters' desks. So they are, again, negotiating on your behalf to make sure the spreads are tight, so that you're getting the best deal when we go into the market to price. So it is sort of shopping around for investors based on that demand, and the more investors that come in, then the lower spreads will be.
And you mentioned something like a credit score. Where would Flagler Schools, where do we rate on the credit score scale? I mean, are we considered?
I think it's A+ right now.
Yeah, I'd like to just, since you brought that's a part of the underwriting. I want to make sure that we're on the top tier when it comes to credit rating.
Yeah, we actually are. This was heavily looked at after COVID, just based on just the finances of several school districts, not just us, but any kind of government municipality. But the most recent one I got from Fitch was A+.
And the credit ratings do look at the economy as a whole, student growth, enrollment. So there's some things that are sort of kind of outside of the control of the district. But then obviously they look at your finances as well. So in working with school districts, they'll say, how come we can't bump up, but it will be what your income is in the economy, which you have no control over. And so there's some of those which I can definitely come back and talk to you more in detail if you want to know more of sort of what builds up the credit rating, if you would like, but yeah.
And we do, on an annual basis, go through the credit ratings process with Fitch or whichever market is at the time, and our financial advisors assist us with that, along with our attorney would assist with that. And we did have to go through a similar call for this financing as well. We would do it every year. This year, we'll probably look to take out a TAN, if not this year, the next year. We have been in a fortunate position to not have to take out a tax anticipation note to get through funding our general operations based on the capital funds that we have. But every year we do that, we do have to go through the credit ratings call as well. So it is an annual basis that we do that.
Okay. Yeah, I would say it would be good practice for us to monitor that, and because sometimes you have things on a schedule with borrowing, but there's sometimes when you have to do it unexpectedly. We don't want to be caught in a situation where, hey, our credit rating could have been a little bit higher than it is at the moment. So
yes, absolutely. And Ms. Howe is very good with her team about making sure we have our monthly and future projections for our cash flows intact whenever we need to do something like this. So it is definitely something that's monitored on an annual basis.
Okay, good to know. One last question for me. The outstanding balance is $24,200,000, and the principal refunded balance is going to be $14,535,000. So what's the difference there? Is that a portion that is a certificate within that? Can you explain the difference in those two numbers?
It includes a 2024 maturity as well in the current outstanding amount because that hasn't been paid. But there are two maturities, and I didn't have the numbers with me, but they have a 3% coupon and a 3.25% coupon. So you would actually have DIS savings because we do look at it on a maturity by maturity basis. So the rest of them have 5%, so you can see savings to get those down. But the other two are at 3 and 3.25%. And so they're showing DIS savings. It's not advantageous. So we would leave those outstanding.
Okay. Any other questions?
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so that concludes finance consent. Thank you, Ms. Wormack. We will move on to 9 academic services. And first up is 9.01 NEFEC agreement. And Mr. Woolahan, welcome. And Ms. Bosserdette is on her way up.
Good afternoon, Chair Furry, School Board Member, Superintendent Moore. I'm here to present the key highlights of the NEFEC agreement for the 2024-2025 school year. This agreement covers a range of services essential for our district's operations. As you see before you, there are the main changes and the impacts, and I'll just highlight the few. There is an increase of $588 of the main contract, an increase of $522 of the instructional services, an increase of $3,023 for the educational technology services, an increase of $4,144 of the Skyward licensing fee, increase of $100 of the document archiving fee, and this year there is a decrease of $173 of the risk management portion. To put these changes in perspective, recall that last year we experienced a total increase of $561,000, $17.38, $602,906.18 was just in the risk management line item. So we are actually only experiencing a total increase this year of the contracts of $8,204. So
well done.
Yeah, well.
It is, it was a happy, I'm in the risk management piece for NEFEC, and 2 years ago, we sat at the table and it was a
Not good. Not good.
Not good.
it was a not good meeting, but we did have to agree upon it at that meeting. This year, the table of risk managers for NEFEC, for the consortium, was very pleased with the risk management piece. And really, just for perspective, you go back to the two previous contracts, there was an increase of $96,000. So an $8,000 increase for perspective, coming from 2 years ago. I think we're trying to level out now. So we're here for any questions, from a finance piece, from a Skyward piece, or from a risk management piece. In the contract, you'll see on page 21 the risk management piece, where it's broken down to. So, any questions on that?
No, this is one of the biggest expenses a school district has annually. So, but it's necessary to be in this consortium because it does save us in the long run. So actually, 8,000's not bad. Not bad at all.
Since this is going to be the last time I ever get to comment on the NEFAC contract, let me just say, this is actually probably the best year that we've had the least amount of increase over the years. We've seen this contract just skyrocket. I will say the same thing I kind of say every year. I'm grateful that the increase is manageable this year. But when NEFAC, when the agreement originally came into being, we were a small county. I think we had 6,600 students. A lot of these services we couldn't provide, which is why we contracted with NEFAC. And now I look at some of the, and this, you guys have heard me say this before, some of the contracted services, we're rock stars. Our departments are rock star, are in technology department, instructional department. And so I guess on a final note, I would just encourage the district, encourage the team to continue to look at these services and say, are we grown up enough? Are we now grown where we don't need to pay another entity to do many of these things that we, when we were smaller, couldn't do? The scale wasn't there. But I would say that our instructional services are like none other. Our educational technology services, again, what we have, if you look at the NEFAC districts, we're experts in the field in many of these areas. So moving forward, I would just encourage the district to consider itself grown up for some of these areas and think about just scaling back aspects of the contract. And I love the folks at NEFAC. This has got nothing to do. NEFAC is a wonderful organization. It has been a critical element that we have needed over the years. But at what point do we say, we got it. We got this piece of the puzzle. We can handle it from here on. So that's all I'll say. The increase in the cost, whew, boy, it's a lot easier to swallow this contract when it's under a $10,000 increase. When it's a $500,000 increase, it's really, really hard to swallow. So good negotiating there.
I have a question about when the negotiations go on here, can you pick and choose these services with NEFAC, or is it all inclusive?
No, they are not all inclusive. One of the services that we benefit the most from is risk management. Yes. And in order to be a part of the risk management, there are a number of services, I want to say 3 others that we have to be a part of. And so we do look at what features we should continue to be a part of, which ones that we no longer have need of. And as Dr. Conklin did state, our friends at NEFAC do provide a lot of great services to us. But one of the ones that we benefit the most from is definitely our area of risk management.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to 9.02, reading plan with Ms. Frank and Ms. Ackerman.
Good afternoon, Board. We are here to just give a little bit of an update to the last workshop on the comprehensive evidence-based reading plan. We added the data because we got all of our data in. And so on board docs is the reading plan, but you guys have the actual data on which areas we met our goals, which areas we did not, and we're just here to answer any questions.
What's the green highlight?
So those are specific areas where we met our goal. So that first half is our goal from this past year. And then on the other half of the page is the actual data. So if we met our goal, it's highlighted green.
Level 1 always screws me up when I'm looking at it because you want to look down, you want it to decrease, and I'm always, never mind, ignore me.
And also, just to add as a reminder, where we didn't meet our goals, it is our goal this year to make up that difference plus add our 3.
Okay. Thank you for providing the data.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions? 9.02?
Great.
Okay. So then we will move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9.03, travel consent, field trips. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Chairman Furry, school board members, Superintendent Moore. I have a few items for you today. The first one is out of county travel. We have 2 trips, both FPC, a cheer camp, and a cross-country camp for Coach Halliday. I see, and I know he's done it for several years, this trip to Boone. It's a great experience for our students. Any questions regarding the travel?
Are we going to recognize Coach Halliday at any point in time for his recognition and award he received?
We will.
Okay, just asking.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Any questions?
All right. 9.05 is Daytona State Articulation Agreement, and this is our renewal. There has been no changes to the agreement that you had before you. It's just a continuation. No, ma'am.
No, and I do want to take a moment and typically you would have, and I missed this opportunity at our official board meeting, but typically you would have Ms. Louise Bosserdette here presenting the Daytona State Articulation Agreement. But as you guys are aware, hopefully you are aware, you've approved it, but she is now the Director of Information Systems. And so we just want to thank her for all of her hard work in the Department of Teaching and Learning. So as Mr. Mark Saltmarsh is retiring in a few months, or a month now, we're at, Ms. Louise Bosserdette will take over as the Director of IS. So we are extremely proud of her. And so Mr. Reeves is taking over the articulation agreement, as he has been taking over throughout the year. But she is shifting from teaching and learning to technology.
Perfect fit. Perfect fit. Perfect fit.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, no questions. The next one, 9.06, is our MOU for Flagler Volunteer Services. This is just to make things aligned. Last year, we came before you and presented an MOU. We also presented a student privacy agreement with it. The student privacy agreement was for 3 years. The MOU originally was just for 1. So this MOU aligns our MOU with the student privacy agreement so that when we do this now, they'll be at one time, at the same time.
Very good. I just want to, just for the record, that is 9.05 on my, I didn't see here.
My apologies.
Yes.
It is.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
9.5.
Okay, so we're not, the next, is there any questions on that? Okay. So now 9.06, it's board approval of Flagler Youth Orchestra.
So this request before you is, we've had an exceptional year. As many of you know that we made some transitions last summer, and we were able to shift and stand this up in 6 weeks, and had some just exceptional work and effort by our team there. Over 1,350 tickets were sold throughout their 3 concerts they performed, and many more in the community, and 197 students were served in that process. As you know, the agreements, these personal contracts, are set up to be not to exceed. And this one individual stepped in to help out when some others could not, and it pushed us over the dollar limit by $425. And so because it went over the not to exceed, I had to bring it back before the board for your approval to grant this request for the increase. This is actually the 24-25 one here before you. There should be, it might be out of order. Is there a, I will shift and should be, I'm watching you scroll. So 9.06, 9.06, there you go. That is Ms. Pam Morales, Dr. Morales, excuse me, Dr. Morales. This is the extension, should be, well, maybe they uploaded the wrong, put it in the wrong slot.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
yeah, there's two of them.
this
I was
looks like
curious.
This looks like a year long.
There's
Right.
two things before you.
There's two for her, right.
So there's one, can we go to 9.07?
One was for 500,
One was for 500.
the other was
Is for next,
5,000.
it was for next year. The 500 is the contract just to extend, to take care of the gap that was created when she worked the extra hours to cover the rest of this contract.
Where's the $500 one?
There was an issue. We had to, with uploading documents, we had to pull some documents down and reload them. And I think that was missed. So we will get that corrected,
Yeah.
have it before.
I saw it, so
It
was there.
here. We had to
It
pull
was
some
there.
information. We had to pull it all down.
Because I had
and
that question, why there were two.
So that was to correct 23-24 year, the $500.
Okay.
Because it exceeded the contract not to exceed amount. And so that was that for that one, for Dr. Morales.
So we will get it corrected on board docs.
Correct.
Today or tomorrow. I think Lorraine is working on it right now, but it will be corrected for you to take action on the 18th.
Okay.
Jeff, how many students did you say?
197.
Okay. I went and came to a roundabout figure, it's costing us $99,000, rough $99,000 a year. Where do we stand?
Actually, we are under budget.
Okay.
So we didn't start until August, September. So we actually are about $3,000 under the budget that we set up through the district office. So we are well on track. We're under budget for everything this year.
So it came in under the 78,000?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'm still a little, so is the attachment that's under item 9.06, is that supposed to be under 9.07?
That is correct.
With the others?
That is correct.
Okay. And 9.06 is simply asking
$500.
for the additional 500?
Correct.
Because it went over the 78?
Not to
80?
exceed.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Not to exceed amount.
And correction, Dr. Conklin, it didn't go over the 78. It went over the individual's
contracted
personal,
amount.
yes, her contracted amount.
Correct.
Okay.
Because that was the not to exceed amount. Their budget is aligned that anything over what the district supplies is to come out of their internal accounts.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm just somewhat confused. If you take the contract amounts for all the others for next year, it has us at around 99,000. How come?
So
If we're under the extra time frame?
you're talking about the 23-24 year right now?
20,
Okay, so we didn't start until
Right.
later, right?
I got
So
that.
there was no payments in July.
right.
And they started later. In addition to that, Dr. Luce, who is our executive director, managed his staff and time exceptionally, and as a result, did not require the amount of hours that were used in previous contracts.
Are you talking about last year's or the one coming?
The one
asked
coming
about
up.
the 23,
Yeah, but what about the
24?
one coming up?
The one coming
All the
up?
contracts you have here for us for approval
So-
takes us $20,000 above the 78.
So if we're ready to move on to 9.07, that's the projection for next year, the 24-25 contracts.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So any difference that is over the amount that the district supplies is to come from their internal
We'll
accounts
make
to
it-
pay for.
Okay, they'll do that through their fundraising efforts.
That is correct.
Got it. Okay.
Still going to be the 88?
It'll be 78.
78, yes, ma'am.
78,000 to the district, and then they have
Has
to
not
pick up the
changed.
rest.
that
Which is
dollar
what
figure.
they've always done historically.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move on to operational service consent 10.01, proportionate share mitigation. Mr. Whitson, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Fury, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore. This is another proportionate share mitigation agreement for this group that's Palm Coast 145. It's a 338 single-family home development, and I guess I would characterize it near the K section. There's a map in the agreement, and it's all ready to get going. It's going to add a total of 74 students, and the breakdown is 28 elementary, 18 middle school, and 28 high school.
Yeah.
I know I've asked this question before, but what if we vote no? I'm just curious.
This is basically a document that authorizes them to proceed under the terms of the Florida law. And if you don't, then I don't know what they would do, but I would imagine the attorneys would take it up from there.
Mr. Delaney, what would happen? Oh, did we lose him?
Yes. I don't know a district that has gone down that path. I believe that we would need to stick with the letter of the law on that. I would need to do some more research to find out what all the implications would be, because I haven't seen it attempted before.
Got you.
We'd have to have a cause or a reason behind it, you know?
Well, it's bringing in how many middle school students?
I think the projection is 18. 28 elementary, 18 middle, and 28 high school, and the mitigation is for the middle and high school students.
28.
Mr. Whitson, did you already bring us the one going in Benel? That's 3,000 acres. I thought you did.
No, that one's a ways out yet, but I have definitely been at the negotiation table with that party and with the city.
I'm thinking high school and middle school.
Yeah, and we're
going to have to be
everywhere
dealing
you
with
turn,
that.
they're building.
Yeah.
Right. You know, but again, just because we're talking about it, you know, they're bringing it forward because we're asking them or they're required to pay that mitigation fee.
Oh, I
So
understand.
that is yeah, good question. What would happen if we said no?
Sure.
Right, just for curiosity purposes, yeah.
Chair, in our interlocal agreement, we have outlined the procedures that each of the municipalities have to do, and we signed the interlocal agreement. So I'm not sure what would happen if we go back on the interlocal agreement.
It is just absolutely mind-blowing to me, the amount of development that is going on right now. The infrastructure that's going to be required in place is just questionable. That's all.
If I may, I was going to bring this up. You had asked for a copy of the agenda for the ILA oversight meeting, which is where that kind of discussion would take place. So I have a copy for you.
That would be great.
I have a copy for the other members, a hard copy that I could provide for you. And if you'd like to sit down and have a briefing on that, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're just saluting and implementing what we agreed to.
All right. If there are no other questions, then we'll.
Chair Furry, before we move on from this operational services, and gentlemen, I just wanted to kind of check in, just a question that I had after Dr. Conklin, our 10.02 conversation, because it occurred to me that maybe I'm not understanding that particular line item because it's an ILA. So I was hoping maybe just under sunshine, right? I don't mean to waste the board's time, but just per sunshine. With an ILA, is that something that is more or less not operations, and it's more a direct piece of consideration for the board specifically?
It's an agreement, and Mr. Delaney can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is it's an agreement between the elected bodies, which are, of course then are followed out by staff. So I would see it, but Mr. Delaney?
Yeah, that agreement was
Is that about
approved
right?
in October of 2022.
I think, Dr. Conklin, I was listening to your questions, and then I was kind of processing what Superintendent Moore, said after I asked my question. And it kind of occurred to me that I was in that moment kind of thinking of this as an operations piece. And so when you were asking these very good, but I don't want to use the B word, but I can't think of a better word, fundamental basic questions, right, that should of course be asked when you're looking at a contract, especially space we own, right, and yet we're paying and it's maintenance, but we own it. It's kind of very confusing. So as a board member, when I see ILA, should I make the assumption that we're, as board members, more on the hook to be asking those questions versus your leadership team thinking about the questions that Dr. Conklin was asking? And I don't know if I'm making any sense at all.
No, you are. I think it's a joint effort, right? I think staff works on the ILA, like for the ILA that is being referred to by Mr. Winson, there is a working committee from all of the different entities, staff from the county, staff from the school
I've been on it.
district.
I mean, we've together.
No, different. That's I'm talking about the working committee.
A different one.
Yeah, the working committee that serves that body.
Yeah.
That you're on,
Yes.
right? So staff go back and they work collaboratively between the cities, the county, the school district and whatnot, and then they bring forward their recommendations. But you'll notice during those meetings that there may be additional recommendations that come from commissioners or come from city council folks or school district folks. And
if
then
I
that is your
may-
opportunity to kind of.
Yeah, and if I may, we can get into those details. We track everything. We're tracking all the rooftops. We're tracking its impact to the schools. We have the formulas. I mean, Dave has this spreadsheet that you wouldn't believe. So, I mean, we get into those level of details, and we'd certainly be happy to bring you up to speed on what all is going on in a brief before this meeting on the 12th.
No, I appreciate it. And I'm speaking, specifically to the site sub-agreement with the soccer fields and whatnot. And just, Dr. Conklin, for you to kind of be inside my head of like what I think about. We are an elected body. We could be comprised of anybody with any background, with any skill level or lack thereof, right? So with your over 20 years of experience, on this board, with your doctorate, with your, right, and you're asking these questions, it gives me concern. Like, what if this body didn't have, at any given time, didn't have the right skill set or the right thoughtfulness, right? Is someone, and that was kind of my question to Superintendent Moore, who at the district, on something like this, for instance, is thinking through those things to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward? We're in fair agreements, right? When we're working with municipalities who all have a limited budget, right? How are we making sure that things are fair and equitable and whatnot? So that's just what's going through my head as you were asking these questions.
And we can talk about it at the end of the meeting, just for some dialogue's sake. But I think there exists a check and balance here, right? So, I have faith completely in staff that they are vetting the agreements and going through it. But sometimes what happens is when you're updating an agreement, you're not really changing, like they said, they're not really changing the pricing structure. They weren't really changing some of the items. So it's a renewal kind of thing. So sometimes it just takes a different set of eyes. Again, it's a check and balance type of thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That's how I look at it. It's a check and balance. We've already agreed to a lot of the ILA items that come before us, but each body then approves them again to make sure that we're all doing as was promised or agreed upon, right? So if they brought back these proportionate share agreements to us and they were out of balance with what we already agreed on, the amounts and everything else, then this would be the check before that moves forward. So that's how I kind of see in the world of what we're looking at right at this moment, right?
And here's the real value. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chair Ferry, but here's the real value of having an elected body. When you get agreements like that, it's really your only opportunity to change something at the dais. It's your opportunity as an elected official and body to say, we appreciate staff, that's a great idea, but we would like to see X, Y, and Z included. That may not have happened if it wasn't for the discussion of the elected individuals sitting here, right? We may not even know about something unless somebody, a constituent, came forward and said, hey,
Right, what about this?
why is the school district paying the city? They must make, and a lot of times it's misinformation, they must make hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue on those game fees. So you don't know unless we ask, right? And you have to do due diligence for your constituents to let them know that you're asking those kinds of questions. But I think it's just an opportunity for us to have input if we want changes in those kinds of things.
And I would say that the most recent example would have been the Carver Center ILA that we
Correct.
did. We all that went back and forth to the county, to us. We made changes, and so that's how we talked through that. These ones here that we're dealing with, this has already been agreed upon. That one we were building an ILA. So this is just a check on the ILA we've already agreed to. That's the way I view it. So.
Yeah, no, and I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think I wasn't in the right headspace that this was an ILA. And just to kind of sum it up, for me, we all might see our role here differently, right? And that's fine, like what the purpose is of what we all do. But I think all of your questions then led to my question, which is also, I think, part of oversight and whatnot, as to say, okay, who at the district level is responsible? Again, is it COO? Is it CFO? Is it superintendent? Like, who is that person who is responsible, who is tasked with making sure that this is...
Well, ultimately, if anything hits the fan,
Right, it's...
LaShaka. But it's a team, right? Because if we let something slip through the cracks, ultimately, we approved it. It's on us, right? Not even on LaShaka as the superintendent. But then LaShaka as the superintendent, or Miss Moore as the superintendent, then has Dave and Mr. Whitson and her team that's looking at those ILAs. I think the ILAs are kind of lumped under one, pretty much Dave and Mr. Whitson. I think you guys are the ones that are really handling most of the ILAs, right?
And as the staff goes forward, the staff is looking at areas that were concerned, over the years, our staff, their staff, looking at those items. But I think the Carver ILA was a great example, because sometimes that feedback comes at the beginning, before we go to the table. Sometimes it comes at the end, after we've gone to the table and we've said, okay, this agreement from our perspective is an agreement that is appropriate to now come before the board. And sometimes it happens all throughout. And so when we think about the agreement, specifically the agreement that we've discussed today with the city of Palm Coast, we feel like the agreement is an agreement that is appropriate for you now as a board to take consideration on. But if you want to make changes on it, absolutely, we'll go back and have those conversations around what is a priority now for this board.
And sometimes those things don't become known until the ILA becomes published, right? Becomes part of a working agenda. For example, the Carver piece went kind of back and forth. As the community became aware of certain aspects of the ILA, they shared those concerns with us, and then we were able to bring those concerns forward. So there's a lot, again, I think it goes back to kind of the checks and balances and kind of listening to each other and other entities.
And I think it's important to understand something. I really firmly believe that the district has to do what they've got to do to protect the district. at all costs. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to be doing. It is our job to protect the taxpayers. We're being paid by taxpayers to make certain the district is doing the right thing. And it's a different perspective. And when it comes to ILAs, just like we get feedback from the taxpayers, the constituents, the people who care, we look, we listen, and it's our job then to determine what is the best avenue for the district. They give us all pieces to protect the district. This is how it should be. But you might come up with some ideas, like Dr. Conklin did earlier. Well, what about these things, which really wasn't part of their thought? They're thinking, what they had in the past. So it is a give and take. We have to find mutual ground, and it's our job to oversee all that as board members. So.
Okay, thank you.
Still don't want to vote for it. Thank you.
Oh,
But
yes,
I won't
I
give
have it in
Mr.
my email.
Delaney a
Thank
heart
you.
attack.
No, I'll just take the digital, yeah.
Chairman Furry, Superintendent, Board, I'm here to share 11.1 through 11.3, beginning with the personal items that we have so far to date that will be continuing to grow and build in preparation for the meeting on the 18th.
Bob, before we move on to the other items, if during the last agendaed meeting, there was quite a few, there was probably the longest list I've ever seen of resignations. And I know that there is a lot of variables going on just in public ed right now that could be the reason for that. I know we've talked in the past about exit interviews. Mm-hmm. And if you could give us an update or just speak to kind of the process of exit interviews and whether or not at some point in time, I don't know how we do that, if it's on an annual basis, you collectively take all the exit interviews over the course of a year and you try to look at some trends or look at the data and reasons and whatnot, or if it's, it's looked at at the end of the year. I don't know how that's used, but I would think that there would be some good data in our exit interviews to start to continue to identify the reasons folks are leaving, and then have a discussion during board workshop or whatever it might be on how we might mitigate against some of those reasons, because I think it's going to get far worse before it gets better.
And I'll be glad to share the exit survey trends that we have. And the exit surveys, just so you know, when anyone decides to leave the organization, we send out to them a couple different ways where they can do either, by hand on paper or through a link, an exit survey. And we do have, and this has just been in my tenure that we've had the ability to start doing that. And we do have collected, and I'll be glad to share, there is no conclusive majority trend. We do run the entire gamut of reasons. And from, folks, we have a much more mobile population as far as teachers now, because we're still in the teachers market. And so people do decide to move within the state and out of state for that. And, we also run the range of, questions regarding salary and compensation and things like that, is right up through to, dealing with aged, family members out of state. But I'll be glad to bring forward a compilation of that at the next.
If the rest of the board I would be interested in that for sure. And if you could share with us kind of what the response rate is. In other words, if you send the links out to 100 employees who resigned, what's the response rate in that survey? And then I'd be curious to know, what are the questions in the survey? Are there kind of forced questions with forced categories for them to choose from so we could identify some trends, or is it more like other and people can put in a response?
I'll give you
Do you know what I'm
detailed
saying?
across the board.
That
Absolutely.
would be awesome.
All the questions, the responses, and the response rate. I'll bring it all.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Question, Bob. Do the school district HR have like a group or consortium or something where they can really work with Tallahassee?
We just like a lot of the NEFEC groups, we're part of the NEFEC consortium, and we meet that way. There's also an association at the state level that does have annual meetings and does push forward particular items, just like all other.
The reason I'm asking is our salary structure is killing us, and we're going to pay the price here in Flagler, particularly since we're having all this building and they're bringing children with them, and we have to put them in. But our graduating teachers, why come here for $47,000, $48,000 when they can go north and get 70? That's the starting salary up north, $70,000. So, I mean, this state has a surplus. A lot of it's been on the back of teachers. Our teachers need more money, not just starting salary money. Our regular teachers need an increase. And there has to be some kind of political push to have that done. Otherwise, we're going to be scraping and banging every tree we possibly can to get warm bodies in the classroom. We're starting to see it now. It's going to get worse, as Dr. Conklin just suggested. And any organization that can do that, and I'm thinking of the HR piece of this, we've got to get something going. So Tallahassee hears us.
Absolutely. The last numbers I saw were the state of Florida was 16th in first-year compensation and 50th in average.
I was just going to say,
we are
the average, I think,
50th.
is
West Virginia sits below us, that's it.
But I will, whether it's not enough, it was at least something.
Yeah,
so the
something.
governor at least mandating that we bring the starting salaries up to where they need to be was great, and I don't want to seem ungrateful for that.
No.
But it's if you think about somebody who's given 20 years of their life, 15 years of their life, 25, 30, and they're only making $60,000 in the classroom, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. So trying to figure out how to mitigate that situation when we had to compress all those steps. And I'd like to throw out for consideration if we could possibly workshop something like this, to look at trends, to kind of look at what is our retention rate. Are we losing people 1 to 3 years, 1 to 5? How many folks do we have on the top end that we're looking at? We just saw a huge group retire. So I'm not talking about getting into bargaining, dangerous waters in regards to bargaining, but how many over the next 5 years can we anticipate are going to be retiring? And kind of what are some of the best practices we're looking at in addressing some of those areas. And there are some creative solutions out there, and I know you all are kind of working on some of those things. It just might be comprehensive to share what, as a board, the district is looking at and doing. And that goes for our support personnel as well, right? How are we going to address those needs? Because it's getting harder and harder and harder. And the other question I have, we don't have to answer it right now, but how do we flip folks? I know we have a lot of administrative positions open right now, principal, AP, and those kinds of things. How do we move individuals from an instructional lane to an administrative lane without them losing years of experience and time? Right? How do you take someone who's an experienced teacher for, say, 10, 15 years, and there's an AP position open, and they're interested in maybe applying for that position, but they're being told, you might have to start at zero. Can we address that? Because that just doesn't seem
And
right.
I would say that that's not, we do have a compensation, formula when we take folks from the instructional bargaining into the administrative lane. And we do start with their total compensation of where they are as an instructional, and then look at where they are. It's not an automatic start at zero.
I guess what I'm saying is there seems like there's so much discretion possible in that process, right? If I'm a principal, who negotiates that salary or that step with that individual?
That the starting discussion, depending if they're school-based, would be with myself and the applicant that has been, selected for board approval. At a district level, it's often the chiefs or the director at that point has that initial discussion. And they have myself or that level person has some discretion based on experience and years of service and the total look at their resume as far as within 5 steps. And then there's also an additional look that would be at the approval of the superintendent for up to an additional 5.
Okay. But I think the thing Dr. Conklin is kind of add is that your instructional years are not equivalent to your professional years or your years on the administrative lane. So looking at someone who would be going, who's at 20 years in the classroom, is not going to be them at 20 years on an administrative salary lane. I think,
But it wouldn't be 0, certainly.
it would not necessarily be 0, but it may not be as big of a jump as people anticipate, depending on how many years you have been in the instructional unit.
Okay. Because I would fare to say that there would probably be some teachers that would say they handle quite a bit of administrative duties in the classroom with a lot of little people.
I am
But,
sure.
I just think it's worthy of a conversation because I'm curious about, is there the standard operating procedures around that, right? When we move somebody, like at the university, if I'm bringing somebody onto my team, HR gives me a window, right, a band, and I negotiate with that individual. Now, if I can't get to where that person needs to be to hold them, I then me, as the person hiring or recommending that person for hire, I then go to HR to negotiate basically with HR on behalf of my department and that person to say, hey, I need to go $2,000 outside of this band to make it work. Is there a way we can make this work, right?
Yes, we do have a standard operating procedure around that.
Okay.
That is just as you have stated.
But the principals are not doing that negotiating. I'm hearing you say that
No,
the teachers have to do that negotiating or the admin have to do that negotiating with HR.
Because the principals are not the hiring manager for an assistant principal exclusively, okay? Because the assistant principal, for example, we're getting ready to hire an assistant principal at Matanzas. That is not an exclusively Matanzas forever position. That works at the pleasure of the superintendent. So 3 years down the road, we could look at it and have discussions where a superintendent could talk to any assistant principal and say, we really need, very similar to the administrative team we currently have, for example, at FPC. A lot of those very seasoned assistant principals did not initially get hired at FPC. They are at FPC now, but they were moved there at the course of this time of year, a few years back, to go ahead and meet the needs of that school at that moment.
But didn't they still have to interview with the principal?
No.
When the APs moved there? They didn't, they were just moved?
Yes.
The principals do not hire the assistant principals. Assistant principals are hired, they come to the superintendent and I make a recommendation for hire.
Okay, so I would really love to workshop this topic because
we
that just
absolutely
seems
may, because think
very-
about it as like this, and we've experienced this here in Flagler schools. When someone is hired, they're hired as an assistant principal, they are assigned to a school. But if we need them to serve at a different location, I, as the superintendent, can move those individuals to that other location. You're an assistant principal. You're not an assistant principal or a principal that is just at this one particular school.
But wouldn't professionally, how do you not acknowledge an administrator with the right to hire their team? I don't understand that. So we're saying the principals don't recommend, I feel stupid right now after 24 years. I feel like I'm learning something brand new
They
here.
are a part of the process. They are a part of the process.
So are they recommending their assistant principals for hire?
They are a part of the process.
They are, for example, we are getting ready to hire assistant principal. We are setting a hiring team, and the principal of Matanzas is the lead of that hiring team.
Okay.
We will interview, and a finalist will be put forward to the superintendent based on the recommendation of the hiring team that included the principal of Matanzas.
Okay, so it
Now,
originates at the school.
Yes, but on the flip side, we have a wonderful principal that's vacating the position at Old Kings. If the new principal were to come in and say, gee, I'm just not happy with this leadership team, we wouldn't have a place to immediately remove them and take them to so that the new principal could select their new assistant principals. You know, this principal coming in is going to work with the leadership team that's existing unless the superintendent feels that, you know, there is a need for change based on what's happening at the school.
Okay, I didn't mean to monopolize the conversation. I'm sorry. I just have, it's opened so many questions for me. We'll continue this conversation another time. Sorry, board. Thank you for indulging me.
Gladly.
That was
Thank you.
all from 11.01,
Yeah, I'm
right?
sorry.
Okay, that's, I'm just making sure we did. Okay, so 11.02, community service.
Yes, 11.02, working with operations, we have made some changes and some additions as far as some job descriptions in order to make sure that we have the correct alignment with as far as supervision and administrative personnel. The current makeup had some troublesome areas as far as we had professional folks in areas that where what was needed was somebody that actually had supervisory capacity. So some of those changes were made, and I know that in addition to that, there's an additional cost savings in the changes that took place. And
Is this a downgrade in the position? Is coordinator below supervisor or supervisor below coordinator?
Coordinator's in a unique spot where it sits to the side, actually. It's a professional lane for, and it's different. In our organization, some of our coordinators actually sit within the bargaining unit. Some of our coordinators sit in the professional lane. And we even have a couple coordinators that sit in the supervisory spot, and that's a work in progress.
Okay.
It's listed at the same pay lane as previous, the supervisor versus the coordinator.
Okay, this is, majority is the youth, the two first positions are youth center positions.
Are they though?
Yep.
Are they?
Yep. And it started as a director, then it went to a coordinator, now it's going to supervisor. Not sure why. I mean, I think because of my credentials, that's why it started at a director. But coordinator seemed to work. This is so much better than it has been, by far. For, 6 years I've been trying to get this right. And we're getting really, I think this is about as right as I've seen it for a long time. So I compliment the people that worked on this, okay? I really don't have any other big recommendations. It's relatively simple. I think the two positions, and I'm talking about the supervisor of community services as well as the community service site manager. Those are the two. Meet the needs that have been there and financially works, because that's the key. There were too many people that weren't necessary. And for the most part, I think this is going to be so much better. So I thank you.
See, I thank you for sharing that, Cheryl, because I was thinking the supervisor position was gonna kind of pick up, oh my God, her name just went right out of my head. We have desperately missed her at the board meetings and liaisoning with community groups. Literally just right out of my head.
Crosby.
Yes. So I thought this was maybe Sabrina's resurrected position.
It is not.
That's the youth center.
We,
That's why I
at
wanted-
some point, we have got to have a conversation.
around that and those duties, because whatever we think is working is not working.
That's a whole different lane. But yes, you're right, we do.
And I think that what I would ask Dr. Conklin and anybody on the board, the areas that you feel are not working or are not being addressed, if those things could be brought to my attention so that we can look at how those areas can be addressed within our current structure that we have. I know that this board has also asked that we bring forward an organizational chart, and we will bring that org chart to the board so you can see what our current structure is, and then we can identify where are the gaps so that those gaps are addressed.
Fair. I thought that's what this was.
No.
This is not.
So, are you good with that now?
No, but okay, I mean, I understand, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's good.
And the community education facilitator is who? What?
I think that's the pool.
That is
The
for the
pool.
pool.
That's the
That is
pool. It's gone
correct.
back under FTC, if I recall reading it. That is the
correct.
pool, because they still have an employee at the
Right.
pool.
The
There is
previous-
still one.
The previous title was Youth Services Site Manager, which encompassed the youth center, the Carver Center, and the pool.
Right.
And so we have separated that, so it is separate.
So now we have a full-time allocated position for just the pool,
We've always had a full-time.
but we're not changing that.
We are not.
I think I'm going to just be quiet for the rest of the meeting. Yeah. Hey, Bob, unrelated, but before you leave.
Yes.
Christy and I did a tour of the courthouse with the lovely Dave this morning. And a question came up on childcare. Before Angela comes up and talks to us about high-demand teacher needs, the childcare, who takes advantage? I didn't even know about it. Who participates in that? Like a childcare center?
Well, you're referring to FTC.
Yes. Yeah, is that like students, teachers? Like what is that? I just know childcare was said, and then we didn't really discuss it because we didn't really know the details.
Our students that have children have first priority. Any spots that are left are made available to faculty and staff. But it is a very small center that is geared specifically for those students that have children. We are looking at a time, Flagler Schools did provide a very extensive childcare opportunity to faculty and staff. That has gone away. We are looking at the current Child Center, and the name of it is escaping me, New Beginnings. I think it's New Beginnings Child Center, and I do apologize, but we are looking at that and looking at ensuring that any open spot is being filled by faculty and staff, having a process available for that, and looking at if there is a need to expand that. Maybe there are opportunities for our students, maybe it's opportunities for our teacher orientation to recruit educators into the role of education. But right now, it's a very small center that is specifically for students who have children.
Okay, thank you.
Just to share a historical perspective, when many moons ago, they had childcare at every elementary school.
Every campus.
Every campus. And it was a huge benefit to staff because you could bring your child and drop them off down the hall, and it was awesome. I took advantage of that at Old Kings. But when we grew exponentially, we had no space. And so then the program was basically moved to one location. And each time it got a little more narrow, right? Because you could bring an infant. Then it got to the point where no infants, it was just preschool. And it was, I think, at Indian Trails or Belterre. So it's evolved over the years, but at one point in time, it was a really great benefit for our teachers, and it was very unique. Many districts didn't have it. And it became, because of space, and it became very expensive.
Thank you for sharing. Well, and I mean, listen, and because I'm often misunderstood, when I talk about Rimfire and the media center, for instance, right, and you are in that, to me, vast space, those are the things that are going through my mind, right? Not like, I know it's being used, of course it is, right? And it's being used for great things, and we were sent this delicious slideshow, right? I mean, I know it's being used. It's just like, there are so many things we need space for. Are we optimizing everything as well as we can? Because, space is so needed. Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on to 11.03, high demand teacher needs area.
The high demand teacher needs area, or what they used to call as a critical shortage area, is something that the state, researches and puts out their state list every year. You see on there, there haven't been a lot of changes in the state critical shortage area or high need list over the years, and we have added this year 2 areas that are in our instructional lane, the speech language and the school psychologist, and that's based on now each one of those instructional areas is a very small pool of folks, but they're very specialized, and they're difficult to find at the public school rate of pay because we directly compete with the private sector and the medical areas for these folks. So they're absolutely, I think, important additions to the state list.
All right. Any questions regarding this agenda item?
Is there a reason why they don't just make an overview like STEM? Like they just don't say STEM, those in STEM areas? Because really science, whether it's math, whether it's chemistry, I mean, they're all shortage areas. And even if you think of workforce industry.
Yeah, I don't have an answer why they
Engineers and
differentiate the science and they don't differentiate the math, for example.
Right, right. Okay, just curious.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Allett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 12, superintendent consent, and 12.01 is general counsel policy.
At our last board meeting, we did discuss the need to make adjustments to the current language around general counsel. That conversation did come up in my request that we post for counsel for the school district in order to gauge what is the current market of interest in that position. What you will find in board docs is our current language as well as proposed language that will clearly outline that this allows for an attorney for the board as well as an attorney that reports to the superintendent. That information is found in the body of the board background area. So it is not in the attachment, it's in the body of the board item on board docs.
Looks fine.
That's what it has to be.
So then will the board policy, Mr. Delaney, will you make the recommended changes to the board policy and we can get it on a board agenda for advertising and et cetera?
Yes, ma'am. I can work with staff and we can make sure that happens.
Okay.
And we do have all of that, Dr. Conklin, draft up in the proper format. We can get that out so that we can get advertisement for it. Again, I do ask that the district be given, and we can wait until, and I can, Mr. Delaney can let us know what next steps we need to take, but I do ask that we be allowed to post the position in order to maximize the amount of time so that we can see what type of interest we get in that role.
I don't, I don't have any
I think
issue
it's
with
great,
that.
you have to.
All right.
But will we change this agenda item to an agenda item that is for advertising the
Yes.
policy change?
Yes, we will
Okay.
do that.
All right,
That will be prepared for the June 18th board meeting.
Because there's a timeline.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
All right, so we will close out number 12, and we move all the way to public comment. And there's nobody signed up, and there is nobody but staff in the chamber, so we will move past public comment. And we are now at board member requests.
Can we talk about this setup?
Sure.
I don't know. Do y'all like it? Or I feel bad for people coming up here and having to stand. I think I like being at the table more, where it's more personal.
I agree with you, Christy. It's just, some of our presentations are going to be a lot longer
Yeah.
than what we even had today. And they would have a team of people, which means they would have a team of people standing and jockeying for the mic. I don't know if this is necessary.
It's just more personal, I think,
Yeah.
upstairs, sitting at the table.
Agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I was, hoping that staff could be closer to just no way to do it. The chairs are fixed here to the ground. We can't bring the tables closer. I do like the collaborative experience that we have at the workshop tables. So if we're choosing one over the other, I would choose what we were doing before. So if that's the majority feeling here, then the next workshop we should have back up in the workshop room. Okay? All right. Any other board member requests?
Yeah, I have a request. We've been making a number of requests, all of us at different times, and I know you keep record of it, but I would like to see it listed on our agendas, perhaps the request that was made and the date, so we know where they are and what they are, and we don't duplicate ourselves again, and just where under requests, these were the requests, and as you go over them, we can eliminate them and just keep a running record, because right now, they're just out there in your world, but not necessarily in ours. So if we can just keep, document on the agenda, these were, the past requests, so people know, because I'm sure at some point we're going to start duplicating ourselves for different things that have already been done, and it would just make the organizational level a little bit clearer. That's all.
Okay.
Well, and if I can just add comment to that, the board, to my knowledge, is about to have 3 new members. And so I know a frustration point for me, having just worked so hard in the election, and I joined the board, and I was engaged, and I would bring something up, and it felt like it went it went nowhere. And I would go to the next workshop, and I would bring something up. I remember one of the very first workshops, Dr. Conklin brought up something about a bus for new hires and a tour on the bus. Right, and I remember that, right? You brought that up. And, I don't know if someone followed up with you, but I just wanted to add to that I think, again, because we had 3 new members when we started, we're about to have 3 new members, and I think that would be so wonderful to start getting that structure in place so that they do feel heard and that they do stay engaged in the task at hand.
Can I just ask, we're not, our seats are up, but so are you definitely resigning?
Oh, yeah.
So when is that?
That is when I'm able to. But I will not be here in November. So I'm just saying there will be 3 new board members.
Okay, the reason I guess I'm surprised, because, I didn't believe that was going to be the case, because there could have been an election for that 3rd seat.
Right, and I did consider that.
Now it'll be an appointment.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for those requests. I do agree that, with the comments on the, before it was old business, new business, and it was kind of, now we've changed it to board member requests. It's more direct there, and I think that we can definitely expand on this new way we have our agenda here. So I'll be, brainstorming that, and also with Superintendent Moore, and see what we can come back, something a little more transparent there to keep tally. Okay.
Yeah. It'll be easy, it'll be hard to set it up, because we'll have to go back and bring them, but once it's established, they'll roll on and roll off, and it'll be easy. It won't be complicated.
Chair Fury, was it clear that I'm hoping was there consensus on having a workshop agenda item on staffing and trends and all the rest of that? Did we agree collectively?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was clear, yes.
Okay, I just didn't want that to get
Thank you.
lost.
All right, so if that concludes board member request, we'll go to closing comments.
And no closing.
Okay. Ms. Massaro?
No, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for an awesome graduation, from students, family, staff, administration. I mean, it was spectacular, and was very happy to be able to participate for that grand occasion. And that's all that I would have to add. That's it.
None for me.
So yeah, I'd just like to also thank staff and everybody, Superintendent Moore, on the graduation. It was just a joyful night. It was just wonderful to be part of that, and it went so smoothly. And the speeches that even the students gave were inspiring, and it was just a good night overall. I just want to thank everybody for all the efforts that you put into that. And Superintendent Moore, do you have any closing comments?
Happy summer.
Happy summer.
Though you did bring up something, and sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Dates. We were to discuss dates at the conclusion of this meeting, and we better do that.
Yeah, so we looked at the main date, which was the 28th of June, to make sure that we have that, and we'll have a quorum if the 3 board members that have indicated that they will be here are here. And then I think that gets us to where we need to be by the 18th. Ms. Warmick will be able to finalize the rest of the dates for the trim calendar, and then on the 18th, we'll confirm those next dates. Right now, those dates are tentative. The most important date right now is the 28th of June.
Question.
And everybody has to to have a quorum.
Does it need to be the 28th?
It has to be the last day. We have to close out the
I
year.
talked to Patty before the meeting to see if there was a way to move that up, but because there's certain things that have to close out before that can happen, and 28th is the earliest it can be. It has to be in that month, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the next Monday is the next month.
Right.
So it by falling on Friday, you're stuck.
If Christy is not able to get out of work, because it sounds like we need Christy, is 8 a.m. a have to, or could it be in the evening if need be?
Or 7 a.m. But there's only one
or
person that
earlier.
I just need to agree and say, okay.
Yeah.
I will let you know tomorrow for sure.
Let us know, okay? And if we need to do a 7 a.m., I love a good early
And
morning meeting.
I also spoke with Mr. Delaney. If need be, one can call in to make the quorum, correct?
No, what I would clarify is that we need to have a quorum.
Okay, present. Okay,
You can't make a quorum by virtual.
right, okay. So the quorum has to be physically here, but a board member could call in to make their vote as part of the board, but it would not count as a quorum.
That is a Friday, right?
Friday, yeah.
On Fridays, I'm done at 5 o'clock.
Two board members could attend electronically as long as they were not calling in from the same location.
But you need 3 bodies here.
Yeah. Could we do 6?
Correct.
Okay.
Could we do 6? That'd be too late.
Go ahead, get your schedule, and then we can work to make
Yeah,
it work.
this is the 20, I'm good.
Yeah, same. I can do morning, as long as there's donuts, 3 in the morning, whatever. We can do, you know?
We have to make sure that we do it at a time that the public can have access to, so.
7 a.m. might be a stretch. Excuse me.
7, I think we could work it.
It's like
Yeah.
10-minute meeting, tops.
Okay, we will finalize that with you, Ms. Chong, and then we will get those times solidified.
All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.